Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson of World Alternative Media here, and we are joined by Jim Bell, a familiar face to many of you, but for those that don't know who you are, can you introduce yourself?
I'm Jim Bell. I'm mostly famous for an essay I wrote 23 years ago, provocatively called Assassination Politics. I'm here in Acapulco for a much more peaceful idea, the idea of shutting down the ability of the federal government, the Justice Department, to convict and sentence 77,000 people a year. My idea is fairly simple. They currently only give 2,500 trials to convict the 77,000. The reason is that approximately 97% accept plea agreements. They have to because they are threatened with much more time if they don't. So my idea was, why does not money be collected to offer them maybe about $3,000 to plead not guilty and demand a jury trial? If they do that, then and everybody demands a jury trial, the federal government will not be able to provide those trials, and those charges will have to be dropped. The idea, I think the number of trials they could put on would be about 3,500 a year. At $3,000 per defendant, that's a little bit over $10.5 million. And if that works properly, the number of people they can convict will drop from 77,000 to 3.5 to 4,000 a year. Needless to say, if you stop putting people in prison, the prison population will drop from its current 184,000. I think probably within a few years it'll go down to about 15,000.
Well, that's an incredible idea. I mean, how is this all coming together? Have you been able to make any ground in bringing this to fruition?
Well, it's a new proposal right now, and I've made some contacts here, and I hope to have some, I don't know whether you'd call it venture capital funding, but people who have an interest in it personally or in general they would have it. There are a lot of different kinds of people, classifications, who would be interested in seeing something like that happen. Prior victims of the system, possible future victims, fans of Julius Assange, for example, or maybe there's a guy named Kim.com in New Zealand who's potentially being threatened. Of course, he's worth about $300 million. He could finance this for a year on just 3% of its entire value. There are other internet billionaires or Bitcoin billionaires who could easily support this. As I say, $10 or $11 million a year, and the federal government will simply not be able to convict more than a 20th of the people they've been convicting up to now.
Well, how did you get into all this in the first place? Like, what? Obviously, most people that have gone into this kind of realm have been affected in some way. They've been attacked by the system in some way. Can you go into that? How has it affected you?
Yes, I've done 13 years in federal prison. I know how the system works, and I spent probably 10,000 hours in a federal law library, so I know federal law very well. And I saw how unfair the system was, and I saw how they overpopulate the prisons based on overcharging people, threatening them, and unless they accept a lower deal, they're hit very hard. I thought it would be best if the system could be prevented from operating. In effect, a monkey wrench should be put into the works. And the weak part is that we have constitutional right to a jury trial in many cases, and if we demand the jury trial, they will not be able to put it on for more than a very small number of people per year.
Well, it's a very interesting idea. I mean, we have to have a logical way to get to our goals rather than just say these are our goals. And unfortunately, too many are caught up in, the moral side of them, which is morally correct, and I will agree with them. But how do we get there? And obviously, you've been thinking about this a lot because you've been putting together a lot of great ideas. How can people get involved and help you out?
Well, I have a new, very preliminary website. The project is called Federal Justice Shutdown Project. with justice in quotation marks, but the website is fedjusticeshutdown.org, FED justiceshutdown.org. It's very new right now. It has very little. It has my presentation, which I just gave a couple of nights ago, and but it's on its way. And I'm looking for people who want to help me shut down the federal justice system. This won't last forever. Within a year or so, there's going to be a negotiation. Well, the feds will call it a negotiation. They will be prohibited from convicting people for victimless crimes, crimes without a victim, drugs, money laundering, illegal guns, and anything else that's non-victim. Further, once drugs effectively are decriminalized, there's a lot of crime that would go along with drug dealing, which simply wouldn't happen anymore. In the states that have legalized marijuana, you haven't seen any horror stories, and it becomes very peaceful. That's what I'm trying to do.
Well, and I appreciate that. Many of us here at Anarchapulco 2018 know well, the struggles of, being able to just do things that aren't hurting other people and then getting kidnapped and thrown in a cage and, another number in their quota. And it's so important to tackle this issue. I really appreciate the work that you do, and I hope that the viewers have learned a lot from this and will check out Jim Bell and help lead this forward, because obviously, like I mentioned, it's so important to get to the logical ways to go about things than, just sit there and say, this is what I want, and do nothing about it. Before we completely finish it off, I actually heard, before we turned on the camera, someone asked you about jury nullification. I would love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yes, I first heard of jury nullification probably 35 years ago. I mailed out a lot of flyers and handed out flyers at courthouses. It is, of course, a right. Unfortunately, as I mentioned about the federal system, only about 3% of cases actually go to a jury. And that's not accidental. They've intentionally designed the system to do that. It's nice that jurors know their rights, but jurors also need to understand that the trial is really the end point that mostly is missed. So, yeah, I'm familiar with all the jury nullification arguments. I agree with them all. I wish promoting that has been enough, but there's more that needs to be done.
Yeah, see, in this community, I try to learn about everything that I possibly can, and being a voluntarist, I guess you could say, has kept me a little bit away from even trying to learn about the law, because, I don't agree with the law, I don't believe in the law, but unfortunately, one of the things you really need to do to tackle the system is to understand the law, and it's so important. So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I hope you succeed at it. I honestly mean that.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Like what you see here, OM, don't forget to check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized and censored by YouTube, as the ADL comes in and flags all of our content as hate speech. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description as well as on the screen for you to scan, if you please. And don't forget to find us at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, where you get paid in the upvote of your post in cryptocurrency, Steem that is. So don't forget to find us there. And until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.